It walked past you.
Why did you come back?
The light bulb above flickers with a dying yellow hum. It's the only thing illuminating the endless spiral of concrete steps that stretch into a darkness so thick. It feels heavy. On step number, well, they lost count years ago. 4 people are huddled together. They look less like humans and more like skeletons wrapped in rotting rags. Their skin is the color of ash. Their eyes, hollowed out by a decade of shadows. Alex, the one with the most life left in his trembling hands, picks up his tattered shoe. He looks over the rusted railing into the pitch-black void in the center of the spiral. He drops it. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds pass in total silence. Then, thud. The shoe doesn't hit a floor below. It falls from the ceiling above and hits Alex square on the head. They entered this building on a dare in 2014. It's now 2024. They haven't seen the sun, felt the wind, or tasted real food in a decade. They aren't in a prison. They are on a staircase that has no bottom, no top, and no exit. And the worst part? They aren't alone in the climb. It started as a joke, a way to burn off a boring Saturday in a remote corner of Eastern Europe. There were 4 of them. Jake, the natural leader with a compass in his pocket and too much confidence. Ryan, the life of the party, always looking for a laugh. Chloe, the logical one who studied physics and didn't believe in ghosts. And Maya, the artist, the one who saw beauty in the decay of the old world. They were standing in front of a massive, Soviet-era apartment block. It was a gray concrete monster swallowed by the forest. The locals called it the rib cage. Jake pushed open the rusted heavy doors, and the air inside smelled of wet concrete and stale time. "Let's check the basement," Ryan laughed, clicking his flashlight on. "I bet that's where they kept the secret files." They began to descend. 1 flight, 3. The staircase was a brutalist spiral of cold stone and iron railings. After the 5th flight, the air grew noticeably colder. Chloe stopped, her brow furrowing. "Guys, let's head back up. This place feels wrong." Jake nodded, turning around to lead them back to the entrance. But when they reached the top of the landing where the door should have been, there was nothing. No doorway. No rusted handle. Just a solid, seamless wall of gray concrete. Panic didn't set in immediately. They thought they had just miscounted. "Maybe we went down further than we thought," Jake said, his voice echoing too loudly. They decided to run down, fast, thinking the ground floor had to be just a few more flights away. They ran for 2 hours. Their lungs burned. Their legs turned to lead. As they rounded a corner, Maya gasped, pointing to a small, dusty window on the inner wall. They rushed to it, expecting to see the forest, the sky, anything. But there was no outside. Through the glass they saw another staircase, identical to theirs. And running on that staircase were 4 figures. It was them. They watched their own doubles, in perfect synchronization, running down the same infinite spiral in a parallel void. No matter how fast they ran, their reflections stayed right beside them. Trapped in a mirror world of stone, Chloe began to hyperventilate. The physics she had studied didn't allow for this. To regain some sense of reality, Jake pulled a red marker from his bag. He walked to the center of the landing and drew a large, bold X on the concrete wall. "We keep going down," Jake commanded, his voice trembling. "We don't stop until we hit a floor that makes sense." They walked for another hour in total silence, the only sound being the rhythmic thud, thud, thud of their boots. Finally, they reached another landing. Jake stopped. His flashlight beam hit the wall. There it was. The large red X. But something had changed. The ink wasn't dry. The red wasn't ink anymore. The X was thick, dark, and it was slowly dripping down the wall in fresh, warm streaks of blood. Jake touched the wall. The blood was still hot. It wasn't their blood, yet. But as they looked up the stairs they had just descended, they heard it. A soft, wet slapping sound. Someone, or something, was walking down towards them, barefoot. Weeks turned into months. Or maybe it was only hours. On the staircase time didn't flow, it rotted. Chloe noticed it first. Their watches still ticked, but the numbers no longer made sense. 1 hour of climbing felt like a week of exhaustion. The sun was a memory. The wind was a myth. There was only the yellow flicker of the overhead bulbs and the endless, spiraling gray. But how were they still alive? They discovered the supply landing. Every 24 hours, at least according to their bodies, a small, unmarked wooden crate would simply appear. It would be sitting in the middle of a random floor. No sound of delivery. No footsteps. Inside, there were always 4 bottles of lukewarm water and a stack of raw gray protein bars. They tasted like nothing. No salt, no sugar, just a dry, chalky texture that kept their hearts beating, but their souls starving. As the first year passed, the staircase sickness began to set in. The walls were always too close. The void in the center was always too deep. Ryan, once the joker of the group, was the first to break. He stopped laughing. He started whispering to the shadows. He became obsessed with the idea that the staircase was playing a trick on them. One night, while they huddled together on a cold landing, Ryan jumped up, his eyes wild and bloodshot. "One of you isn't real," he screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Maya. "The stairs, they replaced you. You don't blink the same way anymore. You're one of them." Jake tried to calm him down, but Ryan was gone. He lunged at Maya, a frantic struggle breaking out in the narrow space. In the chaos, Ryan shoved Maya against the rusted railing. Her backpack slipped from her shoulders and tumbled into the dark void. They all froze, leaning over the edge, watching the bag vanish into the absolute blackness. Short, tense pause. They waited for the sound. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Finally. Thud. But the sound didn't come from the darkness below. It didn't come from the void. The sound came from Jake's back. Jake felt a heavy weight suddenly materialize in his own backpack. His knees buckled under the unexpected load. With trembling hands, he slid the pack off and unzipped it. The group crowded around, their flashlights shaking. Inside Jake's bag were Maya's belongings. Her sketchbook, her camera, her water bottle. But they weren't the items she had just dropped. The sketchbook's pages were yellowed, crumbling into dust at the slightest touch. The metal water bottle was eaten away by deep, orange rust. The camera lens was shattered and covered in a century's worth of grime. Maya picked up a small wooden charm she had kept on her bag. It looked like it had been sitting in a damp grave for 50 years. "I just dropped this 2 seconds ago," Maya whispered, her voice cracking. Jake looked up into the darkness above them, then down at the darkness below. The staircase wasn't just looping space, it was looping time. The bag hadn't fallen down. It had fallen through time, aging decades in a matter of seconds before reappearing in the past, or was it the future? Ryan started to laugh, a high, shrill sound that echoed up and down the spiral, because he realized the truth. If the bag could age 50 years in a single fall, what was happening to their bodies every time they took a step? 5 years. 1,800 days of gray concrete and yellow light. The staircase had changed. It was no longer a cold, dead structure of Soviet engineering. Felt alive. Strange, purple-black veins began to pulse beneath the surface of the steps, rhythmic and slow, as if the building itself had developed a heartbeat. The overhead bulbs, once bright and buzzing, were dimming, dying, leaving long, hungry stretches of darkness between the landings. Jake, Ryan, and Maya were huddled together on a landing when they saw him. At first, they thought it was a pile of rags. But then the rags moved. It was a man. Or what used to be a man. His hair was a white mane that reached his waist, and his skin was so translucent they could see the blue map of his veins. He was hunched over a step, frantically scratching symbols into the stone using his own cracked fingernails. The sound, scritch, 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 was the only thing breaking the silence. He didn't look up when they approached. He had forgotten the concept of others. He had been here so long that language had rotted away in his mind. "Who are you?" Jake whispered, his voice sounding foreign in his own ears. The old man froze. Slowly, his neck creaked as he turned his head. His eyes were milky white, blinded by the dim light, but he seemed to look right through them. He pointed a skeletal finger toward the void, the infinite black hole in the center of the spiral. His dry, cracked lips parted. It took him 3 tries to make a sound. It was a raspy, wet whistle. "It only lets you leave," he wheezed, "if you give it a reason to stop watching." Before Maya could ask what that meant, the man collapsed back into his scratching. But his words had triggered something. Maya looked at the wall behind them. The dim yellow light from a flickering bulb cast their shadows against the concrete. She counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maya's heart stopped. There were 4 of them on the landing, Jake, Ryan, Chloe, and herself. But on the wall, there was a 5th shadow. It was taller than the others. Its limbs were elongated, ending in jagged, wispy points. It didn't move when they moved. While Jake was standing still, the 5th shadow was slowly, agonizingly, sliding across the wall toward Chloe. It didn't have a body to cast it. It was just a shape of pure, concentrated darkness. "Chloe, don't move," Maya breathed, her eyes wide with terror. But Chloe didn't hear her. She was staring into the void, her eyes glazed over, as if she were listening to a frequency only she could hear. The fifth shadow reached her. It merged with her own shadow, turning it into a deep, ink-black void on the wall. That night, they slept in a tight circle, their backs against each other. But the exhaustion of 5 years was too much. One by one, they drifted into a heavy, dreamless sleep. In the middle of the night, Jake was jolted awake. Not by a scream. Not by a struggle. Thump-click. It was the distinct, heavy sound of a solid wooden door closing and a lock sliding into place. Jake scrambled for his flashlight, his heart hammering against his ribs. He shone the beam around the landing. Chloe was gone. There were no struggle marks. No blood. Just her empty sleeping bag. Jake spun around, searching the walls, the ceiling, the steps. But there was the problem. The impossible truth that made his blood turn to ice. There were no doors on the staircase. There had never been any doors. 10 years. 3,650 days of a vertical nightmare. Jake, Maya, and Ryan were no longer the vibrant friends who had entered the ribcage on a dare. They were ghosts of themselves. Their hair had turned a brittle, snowy white. Their skin was the translucent color of a blind cave fish. Their muscles had adapted to one thing and one thing only, the climb. They had ascended millions of steps, yet they were nowhere. They reached a landing that felt heavier than the rest. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and old paper. Suddenly, Maya stopped, her flashlight dropping from her weak grip. "Up, look up," she croaked. There, directly above them, standing on the ceiling as if gravity were a suggestion, was Chloe. She wasn't tattered or gray. She looked exactly as she did the day she disappeared, vibrant, young, and wearing her favorite blue jacket. She looked down at them with eyes that seemed to hold the entire universe. "Chloe?" Jake gasped, his voice breaking. "How are you, up there?" "I'm not up here, Jake," Chloe said, her voice echoing from every wall at once. "I'm just on the other side of the filter." She began to walk along the ceiling, her footsteps making no sound. She explained the horrifying truth. The staircase wasn't a building or a prison. It was a filter. A cosmic sorting machine designed to separate the soul from the body. For 10 years, the stairs had been wearing them down, stripping away their ego, their desires, and their physical strength until only the essence of who they were remained. The protein bars, the water? Maya whispered, a realization dawning on her. "They weren't food, Maya," Chloe replied sadly. "The supply crates were your memories. Every time you ate, you were consuming a piece of your past just to keep your body moving. That's why you can't remember your parents' faces anymore. That's why you forgot the color of the sky. You ate those memories to survive the climb." Jake looked at his hands, trembling with a sudden, deep-seated terror. To leave this place they couldn't keep climbing. The stairs were a treadmill for the soul. "To exit," Chloe said, pointing to the absolute blackness of the central void, "you have to stop trying to survive. You have to jump." The thought was paralyzing. For a decade their only rule was, stay away from the edge. Now the only person they trusted was telling them to embrace the fall. The fear of an endless descent into nothingness was a physical weight on their chests. Ryan, whose mind had been a fractured mirror for years, stepped toward the railing. He looked at Jake, then at Maya. A strange, peaceful smile, the first they had seen in a decade, spread across his face. "I don't want to eat any more memories," Ryan said softly. Before Jake could reach out, Ryan leaned forward. He didn't scream. He didn't struggle. He simply let gravity take him. He tumbled into the black void. Maya and Jake braced themselves for the sound of his body hitting the bottom. But the sound never came. Instead, 3 seconds into his fall, the darkness of the void was shattered. A massive, blinding flash of white light erupted from below, so bright it felt like it was searing their very souls. When the light faded, a heavy wooden door, the same door they had heard 5 years ago, finally appeared at the very bottom of the stairs. But the door wasn't open, and on the landing above them, the fifth shadow was no longer a shadow. It was standing at the top of the stairs, and it was finally starting to run. The white light from Ryan's disappearance hadn't just illuminated the void, it had opened a path. Jake and Maya didn't think. They didn't hesitate. They threw themselves into the abyss, expecting the cold embrace of death. Instead, they hit the ground with a soft thud. Jake gasped, his lungs filling with air that didn't taste like dust and old concrete. He looked up. They were outside. The rusted heavy doors of the ribcage stood open behind them. The forest was there. The wind was blowing. They had done it. They had escaped the loop. But as Jake stood up, the relief turned into a cold, stabbing dread. He looked at the trees. They weren't swaying. They weren't green. The trunks were made of textured, gray concrete. The leaves were jagged shards of rebar. He looked at the sky. There was no sun, no clouds, only a flat, matte gray expanse the exact color of the staircase walls. Jake. Look at this, Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Propped against a concrete tree was a weather-beaten piece of plastic. It was a missing person poster. Their faces were on it, young, smiling, and full of life. But as Jake wiped away the grime, his heart stopped. The date of their disappearance was 2014. The date the poster had been printed was 2114. They hadn't spent 10 years on those stairs. They had spent a century. The world they knew was gone, replaced by a hollow, concrete imitation constructed by the building itself. The staircase hadn't just taken their memories, it had outlived their entire civilization. Maya stepped toward him, reaching out her hand. "We have to find someone, Jake. We have to." She stopped. Her hand didn't touch his. It passed right through his arm like smoke. Jake watched in horror as Maya's face began to blur. Her features, the eyes he had relied on, the smile that had kept him sane, were melting into a dark, featureless smudge. She wasn't a girl anymore. She was becoming a shadow. The realization hit Jake like a physical blow. The filter wasn't finished. The door wasn't an exit. It was a selection. Only one essence could truly leave, and the staircase had chosen its survivor. "Maya, no." Jake screamed, but no sound came out. The gray sky began to crack. The concrete forest dissolved into static. Jake felt a violent pull at the base of his spine. The world flipped. The smell of fresh air vanished, replaced by the suffocating scent of wet stone and dying light bulbs. Jake blinked. He was sitting on a cold concrete landing. He was alone. His hair was long and white. His skin was translucent. He looked down at his hands. They were skeletal, his fingernails cracked and bleeding. Then, he heard it. Creak. From far, far above, the heavy rusted doors of the building opened. The sound of youthful laughter echoed down the spiral. "I'm telling you, this place is legendary," a voice shouted. "Let's check the basement." Jake felt a tear track through the dust on his face. He didn't scream. He didn't warn them. He knew the rules now. The staircase doesn't want your life. It wants your legacy. It needs a guardian to watch the climb. It needs a ghost to mark the way. Slowly, Jake reached into the pocket of his tattered rags and pulled out a small, jagged piece of red charcoal. With trembling hands, he leaned toward the wall. He began to draw a large, bold cross. He was no longer Jake the architect. He was the old man. He was the warning. He was the beginning of their end. The loop was complete. If you found a door that never ended, a path that only led back to yourself, how many steps would you take before you finally gave up? On this staircase, the first step is a dare. The last step is a mirror.